James Carter was used to walking into rooms with confidence. He had spent decades building his company from scratch, turning it into one of the most successful businesses in the city. His days were filled with important meetings, business decisions, and frequent travel. But despite his busy schedule, James always took pride in the small moments like checking into a luxurious hotel after a long flight, knowing he could finally relax. This particular evening, James arrived at one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. The kind of place where the chandeliers sparkled like diamonds and the marble floors reflected the warm glow of the lobby lights. He had stayed there before and had always been treated with courtesy and respect. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with the faint aroma of polished wood and leather immediately gave him a sense of comfort. Dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, and polished black shoes, James carried himself with calm authority. He walked past the reception desk with a quiet confidence, expecting the same polite greeting that every guest of his status had received in the past. He reached the front desk, ready to check in, and handed over his confirmation email to the receptionist. The receptionist glanced at the email, then at James, and finally back at the screen. "I'm sorry, sir, but it seems there's no record of your reservation," she said in a tone that was polite on the surface but carried a hint of dismissal. James's brow furrowed slightly. "I have the confirmation right here," he said calmly, sliding his phone across the counter to show her the email. "My name is James Carter. I booked a suite for tonight." The receptionist typed something on her keyboard, then shook her head. "I'm really sorry, sir, but the hotel is fully booked. There's nothing we can do." James felt a pang of disbelief. He had confirmed this booking days ago. How could the hotel suddenly claim it was full? He maintained his calm, hoping this was just a misunderstanding. "Perhaps there's been a mistake," he said, trying to remain composed. "Could you please check with your manager?" The receptionist hesitated for a moment, then pressed a button on the phone. A few moments later, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit approached. He introduced himself as the hotel manager and explained in a formal tone, "Mr. Carter, I'm afraid we cannot honor your reservation. We apologize for the inconvenience, but our policy is very strict." James's eyes narrowed slightly, and he could feel his patience beginning to thin. "Policy? I have a confirmation from your hotel. I even have the email here," he said, showing his phone again. "I have done nothing wrong, yet I am being told to leave. Can you explain why?" The manager looked uncomfortable but remained polite. "Sir, I assure you, it's nothing personal. We have many guests and sometimes things go wrong. I apologize again for the inconvenience." James's heart sank. This was not just a simple mistake. The tone in the staff's voices, the way they avoided eye contact, and the hesitation in the manager's explanations all pointed to something deeper. It was as if they were making a decision about him before even listening to his words. He had never experienced such treatment in a hotel of this caliber, and the humiliation began to sting. Other guests in the lobby noticed the interaction. Some whispered quietly to each other, while others pretended not to watch. James could feel the weight of their eyes, a mixture of curiosity and sympathy. The silence in the lobby made the moment even more intense. He had built his entire life on respect, hard work, and professionalism, and here he was being treated as if he did not belong. Despite the embarrassment, James did not raise his voice or act angrily. He had learned long ago that keeping composure was a powerful tool. Anger might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely solved anything. He took a deep breath and said quietly, "I don't understand why this is happening. I am a guest with a confirmed reservation, and I expect to be treated fairly." The manager shook his head and gestured towards the exit. "I'm sorry, sir, but you will have to leave. There is nothing more I can do." James felt a rush of emotions: shock, disbelief, and anger, but he kept his voice calm. "Very well," he said, "but I want this documented." I want to make sure the proper people know about this treatment. He turned and walked toward the door, his mind racing. How could this happen in a hotel known for its service and prestige? He could feel the heat rising in his chest, not just from the embarrassment, but from the injustice of the situation. He knew he had to handle this carefully. Acting rashly might only make things worse. He needed to think strategically. Outside the hotel, James paused for a moment, taking in the night air. The streets were bustling with people heading home or meeting friends, oblivious to the injustice he had just faced. He checked his phone again, reviewing the reservation confirmation one more time. Everything was in order. This was not a mistake, it was a deliberate act by the staff. As he stood there, a wave of determination washed over him. He would not let this incident go unanswered. But he also knew that acting out of anger would not serve him well. He had to be smart, precise, and professional. James called his assistant and explained the situation. He described every detail: the receptionist's dismissal, the manager's empty apology, and the cold stares from other guests. His assistant listened carefully, taking notes and offering suggestions. Together, they began to plan the next steps. Even as he waited for his ride, James reflected on the irony of the situation. Here he was, a successful CEO who had fought his way to the top, being treated with suspicion and disrespect. It reminded him of the challenges he had faced throughout his career, moments when people judged him before seeing his work or understanding his abilities. But he also knew that every challenge was an opportunity. This incident could be turned into a lesson, both for himself and for the people responsible. James's mind was calm but focused. He knew that his next actions would determine not only the outcome of this incident but also the message he sent to the world. Respect and fairness were not negotiable, and he would make sure that everyone involved understood that. As his car pulled up to take him away, James looked back at the hotel one last time. The lights of the lobby shone brightly, a stark contrast to the cold reception he had received. He made a silent promise to himself: this would not end in humiliation. He would reclaim his dignity, and the people who wronged him would face the consequences of their actions. Even in moments of injustice, James believed in the power of patience, intelligence, and strategic action. He had faced obstacles before, and he had always found a way to overcome them. Tonight would be no different. The humiliation he had experienced would not define him, instead, it would fuel him to act with precision and ensure that fairness prevailed. By the time James's car disappeared into the night, the hotel lobby returned to its usual rhythm. Guests chatted quietly, staff moved about their duties, and the chandeliers continued to sparkle. But for James Carter, this was not the end, it was the beginning of a story that would demand accountability, courage, and justice. After leaving the hotel, James Carter sat quietly in the back seat of his car, staring out of the window at the city lights passing by. The incident in the lobby replayed in his mind like a movie he couldn't pause. He felt the sting of humiliation, but more than that, he felt the deep frustration of injustice. For someone who had spent years building his reputation and business from the ground up, being treated as if he did not belong was infuriating. Yet, James knew that raw anger alone would not solve anything. Acting impulsively would be a mistake. He needed strategy. He picked up his phone and called his assistant, Maria, a sharp-minded professional who had been with him for over a decade. "Maria," he said calmly, though his voice carried the weight of the day's events, "I need you to gather everything we have on that hotel. Confirm my booking, find out who is responsible, and get me any contact information for the corporate office." Maria's voice was calm but sympathetic. "Of course, James. I'll have it all ready within the hour. Should I also check if there is security footage of the lobby?" "That's a good idea," James replied. "We need to be thorough. I don't want this to be handled based on assumptions. Everything has to be documented. No mistakes." As the car moved through the city streets, James began reviewing his emails and messages. He found the hotel confirmation once more, noting every detail: the reservation number, the suite type, and the exact time it had been booked. He also looked at previous stays he had at the same hotel, each one seamless and professional, which made this incident even more baffling. How could a staff member treat a returning guest this way? James leaned back in his seat, thinking. The more he considered it, the more he realized that the problem was not just a clerical error. The staff's behavior suggested a deeper issue: a lack of respect, possibly influenced by assumptions or biases. He had faced prejudice before, though never in such a blatant way in professional settings. And now, he was determined to address it, not with anger, but with authority and professionalism. When they arrived at his office, James wasted no time. He set up a workspace and began compiling all the information he could find. He wrote down a detailed timeline of the events, from the moment he entered the lobby to the moment he was asked to leave. He included names, positions, and any interactions that had occurred. Every detail mattered. In his mind, he envisioned presenting a clear, undeniable case to the corporate office, leaving no room for excuses or ambiguity. Maria brought over additional documents: previous correspondence with the hotel, notes from past stays, and even some reviews that highlighted the hotel's reputation for excellent service. "Everything is here," she said, handing him a folder. "We also reached out to the hotel's front desk to confirm the booking, and they could not provide a satisfactory answer." James nodded. "Good. This will be enough to move forward. But we need more. I want the security footage from the lobby, if possible. I want to see how the staff interacted with me, how they treated me compared to other guests. This will make the case undeniable." Maria began contacting the hotel, politely requesting access to any available security footage. The hotel initially hesitated, citing privacy concerns, but James's professional yet firm approach convinced them to cooperate. Within an hour, Maria had obtained clips showing the interaction in the lobby. Watching them, James's suspicion was confirmed: the staff had been dismissive, cold, and unnecessarily formal with him, while other guests were treated with warmth and courtesy. It was clear that this was not a simple mistake but a serious lapse in judgment and professionalism. James spent the rest of the afternoon organizing everything. He wrote a formal complaint to the hotel's corporate office, detailing every moment of the incident, attaching screenshots of emails, copies of the reservation confirmation, and even links to the security footage. He kept the tone professional, factual, and calm. There was no trace of anger in his writing, only clarity, authority, and the expectation that justice would be done. While working, he reflected on the situation. He remembered moments earlier in his career when he had faced prejudice, subtle and overt, in meetings and negotiations. Each experience had taught him patience, resilience, and the importance of strategy. Today was no different. This hotel staff might have thought they could humiliate him without consequence, but James knew better. He had built his life on turning challenges into opportunities, and this incident would be no exception. He also considered the broader implications. If a guest of his profile could be treated this way, how many others might have faced similar humiliation without the resources or knowledge to respond? James realized that his response could send a powerful message not just to the hotel, but to the hospitality industry as a whole. Respect, professionalism, and fairness were not optional, they were essential. After a short break, James returned to his work. He began drafting an internal strategy, thinking about the potential outcomes. He prepared multiple scenarios: the hotel could apologize and make amends, they could deny wrongdoing, or they could attempt to minimize the situation. In each scenario, James knew exactly how he would respond, ensuring that he retained control of the narrative and that the staff responsible would be held accountable. Maria, noticing his focus, spoke quietly. "James, do you want me to prepare a public statement, in case this escalates? Something that reinforces your professional stance without being aggressive?" James nodded. Yes, but keep it internal for now. The last thing I want is to turn this into a public spectacle before giving the hotel a chance to correct their mistakes. We act with power, not impulsiveness. Timing is everything. As the evening wore on, James took a moment to step back and reflect. He thought about his journey, the struggles he had faced, the late nights, the moments of doubt, and the countless times he had persevered when others underestimated him. He realized that this incident, while humiliating, was just another challenge to overcome. It was also an opportunity to reinforce his values: integrity, professionalism, and fairness. By the time night had fallen, James had everything in place. The complaint was complete, the evidence was organized, and the strategy was clear. He felt a sense of calm satisfaction, knowing that he had transformed a moment of injustice into a calculated plan of action. He knew that the next steps would be critical, but he was ready. Before leaving the office, he took a deep breath, allowing himself a small moment of reflection. He thought about the humiliation he had endured in the hotel lobby, the cold glances, the dismissive words, the sense of being underestimated. And yet, in that moment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would not allow this incident to define him. Instead, it would highlight the importance of respect, fairness, and accountability. James glanced at the clock. It was late, but sleep would not come easily tonight. His mind was alive with possibilities, planning each step carefully. He knew that the people responsible would soon face the consequences of their actions, not through anger or revenge, but through the undeniable power of evidence and professionalism. As he finally left the office, the city lights reflected in his eyes, James felt a mixture of determination and calm confidence. He had faced many challenges before, and this was just another one. But this time, the lesson was clear: injustice, no matter how bold or unexpected, could be met with strategy, patience, and resolve. Walking to his car, he reflected on the importance of handling the situation correctly. Acting rashly could damage his reputation or give the hotel a chance to deflect blame. By staying calm, organized, and professional, he ensured that he would be in control of the outcome. This was not just about him, it was about fairness and accountability. And he was determined to see it through. The night air was crisp as he drove home, the city's energy buzzing around him. James felt a quiet sense of empowerment. Injustice had been met with calm strategy, humiliation had been met with focus, and disrespect had been met with authority. By the morning, the next steps would begin, and the story would move forward toward justice and accountability. James knew one thing for certain: this incident would not go unanswered. The staff who had dismissed him so casually would soon learn that professionalism and respect were not optional, and that every action had consequences. And through it all, James Carter would remain composed, determined, and in control, proving once again that true power comes not from anger, but from patience, strategy, and action. The next morning, James Carter woke up early, his mind already buzzing with plans. The events of the previous night still weighed on him, but instead of anger, he felt clarity. Today was the day he would address the situation directly. It was not enough to simply plan or document the incident, action was required. He needed to ensure that the hotel understood the severity of their mistake and the importance of respect and professionalism. After a quick breakfast, James reviewed all the materials he had compiled: the reservation confirmation, copies of emails, security footage, and notes from the staff interactions. Everything was organized in a clear, chronological order. He wanted the story to be undeniable, leaving no room for excuses or misinterpretation. This was not just about proving he had been wronged, it was about holding the hotel accountable in a professional, precise way. James's assistant, Maria, entered the office carrying a folder. "I've prepared a concise summary along with all supporting documents. We also have the hotel's corporate contact on standby. Once you're ready, we can reach out directly." James nodded, appreciating her efficiency. "Good. Let's make this clear. I want them to understand the impact of what happened. This isn't just about a single guest, it's about the reputation of the hotel and the professionalism of the staff. By mid-morning, James and Maria were in a conference room at the hotel's corporate office. James had requested a meeting with the regional manager and the hotel's head of guest relations. The corporate office was sleek, modern, and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaotic energy he had experienced in the hotel lobby. Here, he knew, decisions were made, and authority was respected. The regional manager, a man in his 50s with neatly combed gray hair, greeted James politely but with a hint of formality. "Mr. Carter, we received your email and reviewed the documentation. Please, tell us what happened." James began calmly, speaking with precision and authority. "Yesterday evening, I arrived at your hotel for a reservation that had been confirmed days in advance. Despite having a confirmed suite, I was treated dismissively by the front desk staff and ultimately asked to leave without explanation. I have the confirmation, emails, and security footage to support this account." He handed over a folder containing all the documents. The regional manager flipped through them carefully, his expression shifting from polite curiosity to concern as he reviewed the evidence. James continued, outlining every moment, every interaction, and every subtle indication of disrespect from the staff. "The behavior I experienced was not only unprofessional," James said, maintaining a calm but firm tone, "it was also humiliating. In a hotel of this caliber, guests expect respect, courtesy, and fairness. I was denied all three." The head of guest relations, a woman in her 40s, glanced at the footage. "I see," she said softly, her voice carrying genuine concern. "It appears the staff did not follow our standard procedures. This is unacceptable." James nodded. "I am glad you understand. However, understanding alone is not enough. The individuals responsible must be held accountable, and steps must be taken to prevent this from happening again. Respect and professionalism are non-negotiable in hospitality, and this incident sets a dangerous precedent if left unaddressed." For a moment, there was silence in the room. The corporate staff seemed to be processing the gravity of the situation. James could see that they understood the severity, and he knew this was his moment to reinforce the consequences. "I want you to take immediate action," he continued, "not just an apology. The staff responsible for this behavior must face consequences, and the hotel should ensure that all employees understand the importance of professional conduct. I am not interested in excuses. I am interested in results." The regional manager cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, we take this matter very seriously. I assure you, appropriate measures will be taken. This kind of treatment does not reflect our standards." James's eyes met theirs steadily. Appropriate measures mean tangible action. It means consequences for the staff who acted unprofessionally and measures to ensure no guest experiences this again. Anything less is insufficient. The head of guest relations nodded. "We understand. We will conduct a full review and take necessary disciplinary actions. We will also implement additional training for our staff to reinforce professional standards." James leaned back slightly, his tone firm but fair. "Good. I am pleased to hear that. It is important to remember that professionalism and respect are the foundation of any business, especially one that prides itself on luxury and guest experience. What happened yesterday should never happen again, to me or anyone else." For the next hour, the meeting continued with a detailed discussion of the steps the hotel would take. James made sure to emphasize that accountability was not just a word, it required action. He listened carefully as the managers outlined plans for staff retraining, internal review, and disciplinary measures. He also requested follow-up reports to ensure that the promises made were actually implemented. By the end of the meeting, James felt a sense of satisfaction. His message had been delivered clearly, professionally, and firmly. The hotel staff could no longer dismiss or ignore what had happened. He had transformed a moment of personal humiliation into a clear lesson in accountability and professional standards. As he left the corporate office, James reflected on the importance of handling the situation strategically. Confrontation without preparation could have backfired, but careful documentation, clear communication, and calm authority had ensured that he remained in control. His actions had not only addressed the personal injustice but also set an example for others. Back at his office, James and Maria reviewed the next steps. They planned to monitor the hotel's follow-up and ensure that the promised measures were implemented. This was not about revenge, it was about ensuring fairness and maintaining professional standards. James believed that when people acted without accountability, it harmed not only the immediate situation but also the integrity of the institution itself. He also took a moment to consider the staff involved. He understood that mistakes could happen, but deliberate disrespect required correction. James wanted the hotel to take this as a learning opportunity to educate, train, and ensure that professionalism was always upheld. This incident had highlighted a gap, and he was determined that it would be closed. Later that evening, James received a call from the hotel's regional manager. "Mr. Carter, we have completed an internal review. The staff involved have been held accountable, and we have begun additional training for all front desk employees. We sincerely apologize for the treatment you received and thank you for bringing this to our attention." James listened carefully. "Thank you. I appreciate your acknowledgement and your commitment to change. It is important that all guests receive the respect and service they deserve, regardless of any assumptions made by staff. This is essential for the integrity of your hotel." After ending the call, James felt a quiet satisfaction. The situation had been handled with professionalism, clarity, and authority. The humiliation he had faced had been addressed, and the hotel had taken concrete steps to prevent future incidents. But more than that, he had proven a principle that he had lived by his entire life, that challenges, even moments of injustice, could be met with strategy, patience, and action, rather than anger or rash decisions. That night, James reflected on the day's events. The confrontation had been intense, but he had maintained control. He had transformed a deeply uncomfortable and unjust experience into a moment of empowerment and accountability. By staying calm, documenting everything, and communicating clearly, he had ensured that fairness prevailed. He also thought about the broader impact. Others who might face similar situations could look at this example and see that dignity, professionalism, and accountability were powerful tools. James had demonstrated that even in moments of personal affront, one could respond with intelligence, authority, and calm confidence. As he prepared for bed, James allowed himself a small smile. The incident at the hotel lobby had started as a moment of embarrassment, but it had become a lesson in strength, strategy, and integrity. He had shown that injustice could be confronted without aggression, and that respect and fairness were non-negotiable in every professional environment. With that thought in mind, James finally allowed himself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as always, but tonight, he could sleep knowing that he had turned a moment of humiliation into a triumph of strategy and professionalism. The following day, James Carter felt a renewed sense of purpose. The previous night's confrontation at the corporate office had provided a sense of closure, but he knew that action alone was not enough. To ensure true accountability, he needed to follow through and make certain that the hotel's promises were not empty words. This was not about revenge or retaliation, it was about principles, professionalism, and making sure that respect was restored. James began his morning by reviewing the hotel's response in detail. He had received a formal email from the regional manager confirming that the staff involved had been placed under review and that disciplinary measures were being implemented. The email also stated that additional training programs would be mandatory for all front desk employees. While this was promising, James understood the importance of verifying the situation personally. Promises on paper were only as good as the action behind them. Maria, his assistant, prepared a detailed plan for James to visit the hotel again, this time in a different capacity. They wanted to observe the operations, meet with management, and ensure that professionalism was being reinforced at every level. Maria suggested, "We can make it a surprise visit. That way, we see how the staff responds naturally, without preparing for your presence. It will give us a true picture of the changes." James nodded. "Exactly. It is important to see real accountability, not just performative actions. We are looking for genuine respect and professionalism, the kind that every guest should experience." By mid-morning, James arrived at the hotel. The building, bathed in morning sunlight, seemed to have a calmer, more organized atmosphere than the previous evening. He could sense the difference immediately, although subtle. The lobby was clean, orderly, and the staff were attentive without being intrusive. There was no sign of the chaos or tension that had marked his last visit. He approached the front desk casually, pretending to be a regular guest. The receptionist greeted him with a polite smile, asking for his name and reservation details. James handed over his information, observing every reaction. The interaction was professional, courteous, and efficient. There was no hesitation, no dismissiveness, no hint of judgment. The staff treated him with the respect that any guest, regardless of background, deserved. As he moved through the lobby, James noticed a shift in the demeanor of other employees as well. Housekeeping staff, bellhops, and concierge personnel all carried themselves with attentiveness and courtesy. There was a sense of pride in their work, a willingness to provide excellent service, and a clear understanding of professional standards. James felt a quiet satisfaction. The change was real. The hotel had taken his concerns seriously and acted to correct the behavior. He requested to meet with the hotel manager privately. Once in a quiet office, James asked directly, "I want to understand how the disciplinary measures were implemented and what training programs have been initiated." The manager, a tall man with a calm, professional demeanor, explained in detail. "After your incident, we conducted a full review of our front desk staff. Those involved have received formal warnings, and some positions were reassessed. Additionally, we implemented a mandatory training program focusing on customer service, cultural sensitivity, and conflict resolution. All employees must complete the program within the next 2 weeks." James listened carefully, nodding. "And how are you ensuring that these changes are permanent and not just temporary reactions?" The manager smiled. "We are monitoring staff behavior daily, conducting regular evaluations, and instituting mentorship programs for new employees. We are also creating a feedback system for guests to report any concerns directly to management. This way, accountability is built into our operations." James felt a sense of pride in the work being done. The hotel was taking a systematic approach to ensure that professionalism was maintained. But he knew that words alone were not enough. He needed to confirm that staff attitudes had genuinely shifted. He asked the manager to arrange a brief interaction with the front desk staff. One by one, he engaged with them in casual conversation, observing their tone, body language, and attentiveness. Each employee greeted him politely, addressed him respectfully, and conducted themselves with genuine professionalism. There was no hesitation, no judgment, no dismissiveness, only courtesy and efficiency. James realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for. The humiliation and frustration he had faced the previous night had transformed into a lesson in accountability, leadership, and change. By confronting the situation calmly and strategically, he had not only addressed the wrongs committed against him but also created an environment where professionalism could thrive. After the interactions, James met again with the manager. "I am pleased to see the progress," he said. "But I want you to understand that accountability is ongoing. The changes must be maintained, monitored, and reinforced constantly. Complacency can undo progress quickly." The manager nodded, understanding the gravity of James's message. "Absolutely, Mr. Carter. We are committed to maintaining these standards and ensuring that all guests experience the respect and service they deserve. James then turned his attention to a broader reflection. This incident, while personal, had highlighted a larger issue in service industries everywhere: the importance of training, respect, and accountability. He realized that one event, one confrontation, could serve as a catalyst for significant change. The key was strategy, preparation, and calm authority. Anger or retaliation would have accomplished nothing. But by documenting the incident, communicating clearly, and insisting on accountability, he had created a lasting impact. He spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing the hotel's training materials and policies. He offered constructive feedback on ways to improve communication, staff evaluation, and customer service protocols. His approach was collaborative, not punitive. He wanted the hotel to succeed in providing excellent service and preventing future incidents. James understood that change required guidance, support, and clear expectations. By evening, he felt a sense of accomplishment. The hotel had not only addressed the immediate issue but had also begun implementing systemic changes that would benefit future guests. James reflected on the journey from humiliation to empowerment. The experience had tested his patience, professionalism, and strategic thinking, but it had also reinforced his belief in the power of calm, deliberate action. He returned to his office, where Maria had prepared a summary of the day's observations. "Everything went well," she said. "The staff have clearly improved, and management is committed to maintaining these standards. You've truly turned this situation around." James smiled. "Yes, but it's not just about them. It's about showing that accountability works, that fairness matters, and that professionalism can be enforced without anger or confrontation. This is a lesson for all industries, not just hotels." That night, James wrote a personal reflection in his journal. He detailed the entire journey, from the humiliating incident in the hotel lobby to the calm, strategic confrontation and the eventual transformation he observed. Writing allowed him to process the emotions and reaffirm the lessons learned. Patience, clarity, accountability, and respect were powerful tools. He also thought about the staff involved. While their behavior had been unacceptable, he hoped that the disciplinary measures and training would guide them toward improvement. Everyone deserved an opportunity to learn and grow, and James believed that true leadership involved both correction and support. As he prepared for bed, James felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The humiliation he had experienced had been transformed into a powerful lesson in leadership, strategy, and integrity. By maintaining composure, documenting evidence, and communicating clearly, he had ensured that respect and professionalism prevailed. The night was calm, and for the first time since the incident, James felt a sense of peace. He knew that the hotel had taken meaningful steps to correct the wrongs, and he had witnessed genuine change. The journey was a reminder that challenges, no matter how personal or unjust, could be met with intelligence, patience, and action. In the weeks that followed, James monitored the hotel's progress through follow-up reports and occasional visits. The staff continued to demonstrate professionalism, and management remained committed to maintaining the standards established. What had started as a personal affront had evolved into a broader lesson in accountability, respect, and the power of calm, strategic leadership. Through this experience, James realized that life often presented unexpected challenges. What mattered most was how one responded. By choosing clarity over anger, strategy over impulsiveness, and professionalism over revenge, he had transformed a negative incident into a story of empowerment, change, and lasting impact. James reflected on the journey as he prepared for the next day. The incident at the hotel was now a chapter of triumph, a testament to the power of dignity, patience, and strategic action. He knew that life would present new challenges, but tonight, he could rest with the confidence that he had faced injustice with grace and turned it into meaningful change. In the days following his follow-up visit to the hotel, James Carter reflected deeply on everything that had transpired. The incident that had begun as a moment of personal humiliation had grown into a powerful lesson in leadership, accountability, and the importance of maintaining dignity in the face of unfair treatment. He realized that while the hotel staff had initially disrespected him, the outcome of the situation had allowed him to demonstrate how intelligence, patience, and strategy could transform a negative experience into something constructive. James decided that it was time to take one final step. His goal was not only to ensure the hotel maintained high standards of service but also to provide a message to the broader business community: accountability and professionalism were not optional, they were essential. He drafted a carefully structured letter addressed to the hotel's regional management, expressing his observations, concerns, and recommendations for the future. The letter was firm but respectful, highlighting the positive changes he had witnessed while emphasizing the importance of sustaining those improvements over the long term. In the letter, James noted that while the immediate disciplinary actions had been necessary, the real test of professionalism lay in the consistency of behavior across all staff and departments. He suggested implementing periodic staff evaluations, additional training sessions on guest relations, and a formal feedback system that allowed guests to report experiences directly to management. He also recommended recognizing and rewarding employees who demonstrated exceptional professionalism, as this would reinforce positive behavior and inspire others to follow suit. After sending the letter, James received a prompt response from the hotel's CEO. The reply acknowledged his concerns, expressed gratitude for his constructive feedback, and outlined concrete steps the hotel planned to take to ensure that the improvements were permanent. The CEO assured James that accountability and respect would remain central to the hotel's operations, and they welcomed his continued guidance in fostering a culture of excellence. Although James had achieved a measure of satisfaction through this correspondence, he knew that true resolution required one final act of presence. He decided to host a small meeting at the hotel, not as a guest but as an experienced professional offering mentorship and guidance to the staff. This meeting was intended to be a collaborative session where employees could ask questions, seek advice, and gain insight into how to maintain high standards in all customer interactions. On the day of the meeting, James arrived early, taking note of the preparations the hotel had made. The conference room was clean, organized, and set up with all necessary materials. Employees from various departments were present: receptionists, concierge staff, housekeeping supervisors, and even a few members of the management team. Everyone appeared attentive and eager, demonstrating a clear understanding of the importance of the session. James began by sharing his personal experience, carefully recounting the events that had led him to take action. He spoke not to shame anyone but to illustrate the significance of respect, professionalism, and accountability. "We all face moments that test our patience and character," he said. "What matters is how we respond, how we uphold standards, and how we treat others, regardless of the circumstances." He emphasized the importance of empathy and understanding in customer service, explaining that every guest came from a unique background and deserved equal respect. He encouraged staff to remain calm and composed even in challenging situations and to communicate clearly and professionally at all times. "Your behavior reflects not just on yourselves, but on the entire organization," he reminded them. "Professionalism is the foundation of trust, reputation, and success." The employees listened intently, asking questions about specific scenarios they might face in their daily work. James provided practical advice, sharing strategies for managing difficult interactions, resolving conflicts diplomatically, and creating positive experiences for every guest. His approach was encouraging rather than critical, designed to build confidence and foster growth. After the session, James took a moment to speak privately with the front desk staff who had initially been involved in the incident. He did not condemn or criticize them. Instead, he offered guidance, pointing out areas where improvement was possible and acknowledging the progress they had made. "Mistakes happen," he said. "What defines us is how we learn from them and ensure they don't happen again. You have the chance to show real growth, and I am confident you can do it." The staff members expressed gratitude, some visibly relieved that the meeting was constructive and supportive rather than punitive. James sensed that the experience had been a turning point for them, a moment where accountability and mentorship combined to create meaningful change. By addressing the issue with empathy, clarity, and authority, he had helped transform a negative situation into a learning opportunity. As the meeting concluded, James took a moment to walk through the hotel once more. The lobby, now bustling with activity, reflected a renewed sense of professionalism and pride among the staff. Guests moved through the space efficiently, attended to promptly and respectfully. The environment was calm, organized, and welcoming, a stark contrast to the tension and uncertainty he had experienced during his initial encounter. He realized that the story of the incident could easily have ended in anger, resentment, or escalation. Instead, it had evolved into a narrative of empowerment, leadership, and accountability. By maintaining composure, documenting events, providing clear feedback, and engaging in direct mentorship, he had created lasting change that would benefit the hotel, its staff, and its guests for years to come. James left the hotel that evening with a deep sense of accomplishment. He knew that the experience had strengthened his own understanding of leadership and the power of calm, strategic action. Challenges, even those that felt deeply personal and unjust, could be transformed into opportunities for growth and positive influence. Upon returning to his office, James reflected on the broader lessons he had learned. He understood that leadership was not about punishment or authority, it was about guidance, clarity, and fostering an environment where accountability and respect were natural. True influence came not from fear or anger but from the ability to inspire, teach, and model the behavior one wished to see in others. He documented his reflections carefully, intending to use the experience as a case study for his own company and potentially for other businesses seeking to improve their culture and customer service standards. The story was not just about a single incident at a hotel, it was about principles, the importance of standing up for oneself, and the transformative power of thoughtful, strategic action. In the weeks that followed, James monitored the hotel's progress through regular updates from management. The feedback from guests had been overwhelmingly positive, with many noting the professionalism and courtesy of the staff. The hotel had implemented new recognition programs to reward exemplary service, ongoing training sessions, and a structured system for monitoring staff performance. The changes were tangible, measurable, and lasting. James felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The humiliation he had faced had been transformed into a story of empowerment, accountability, and leadership. He realized that the incident, while initially painful, had become an opportunity to influence meaningful change not just for himself but for everyone who interacted with the hotel in the future. He also considered the personal growth he had experienced. The situation had tested his patience, resilience, and strategic thinking. By approaching the challenge calmly, documenting facts meticulously, and communicating clearly, he had achieved a resolution that was fair, impactful, and constructive. The experience reinforced his belief in the power of integrity, professional conduct, and thoughtful action. One evening, as he sat in his office reviewing the final reports from the hotel, James smiled. He reflected on the journey from humiliation to resolution, from conflict to mentorship, and from frustration to empowerment. The incident had started as a negative event but had ended as a testament to the importance of leadership, accountability, and respect in every professional interaction. James knew that life would continue to present unexpected challenges. However, he now understood that challenges could be met with composure, strategy, and clear communication. By maintaining focus, providing guidance, and fostering accountability, it was possible to turn even the most difficult situations into opportunities for meaningful change. He closed his journal that night with a sense of peace and fulfillment. The hotel staff had learned valuable lessons, management had implemented effective changes, and he had demonstrated that dignity, patience, and strategic action could triumph over injustice. The story had reached its natural conclusion, leaving behind a legacy of professionalism, empowerment, and constructive leadership. As he turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, James reflected on the final lesson, that true leadership was not about controlling others but about guiding them, inspiring accountability, and creating environments where respect and professionalism were standard. By transforming a personal affront into a powerful story of positive change, he had demonstrated that integrity and strategic action could leave a lasting impact, one that extended far beyond a single hotel or incident.